This morning, the new look of the Texas legislature. Voters sending almost a dozen new Republicans to Austin. Governor Abbott now a lot closer to getting school vouchers passed. The stunning outcome for the Speaker of the Texas House, Dade Phelan, forced into a runoff. The politics in Austin are changing. Republican State Rep Jeff Leach easily reelected in Collin County despite a campaign from Ken Paxton. What was so different in his race? Leach is in studio with us. Texas is sending new faces to Congress, Julie Johnson likely among them. The Dallas Democrat defeating 9 opponents. Johnson tells us the one thing that she says made a difference in her campaign. And the November ballot is set for the biggest race in the state, Colin Allred versus Ted Cruz. Allred on the program with us looking ahead to November.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning. What a week in Texas politics. Lots to get to here on the program, but let's start with the headlines. A big legal decision kind of got lost in all the election news last week. The U.S. Supreme Court temporarily stopped Texas from enforcing its new border bill. This is the one that lets police arrest anyone who cannot prove their citizenship. The Supreme Court blocked the law from going into effect over the weekend and asked Texas for arguments on keeping it by Monday. Ken Paxton's revenge tour took out 3 veteran judges on the state's Court of Criminal Appeals. Now, this is particularly interesting with Paxton facing a felony and going to trial next month in Houston for securities fraud allegations. If Paxton is convicted in that trial, the Court of Criminal Appeals would hear his case. Paxton targeted these 3 judges because of a decision they made against the Attorney General's office. An update to a story we've been watching at Dallas City Hall. In January, a man named Devontae Peters said he wanted to recall Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson. He accused Johnson of missing too many public meetings. But Peters needed at least 103,000 signatures from voters on the petition to recall. He did not submit anything, though, to the city secretary by Wednesday's deadline. This morning, though, let's start with the tremors from last Tuesday, still reverberating through Texas politics. Republicans moved further to the right, and incumbents got defeated, and the political future of the House Speaker, Dade Phelan, uncertain as we go into this new week. One Republican easily reelected, State Rep Jeff Leach from Collin County, an ally of Speaker Phelan's who helped prosecute and the impeached Attorney General Ken Paxton. Mr. Chairman, welcome back here. You won substantially on Tuesday night. Not all of your colleagues in the Texas House did. Why do you think your district was so different? You guys both campaigned as hard as anybody else, but you came out way ahead and on top.
Well, it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy run. It's something that for the past few months, especially the past few weeks, as early voting has commenced, we've spent every waking hour thinking about our voters and talking to them and listening to them and meeting them at the polls. So I can't speak to other districts, but I know that in my district, what Republican primary voters were telling me is that they're concerned about border security, they're concerned about property tax relief, they want parental choice in education, they want Republicans to govern like Republicans. And so if other Republicans across the state lost their reelections or are headed to runoffs because they haven't kept their promises or haven't actually governed like Republicans, then I'll let them speak to that. But as for me, I think the reason I was so resoundingly reelected is because I've kept my promises and I've actually been the conservative that I am to my core that I've always promised to be.
Let me ask you about Dade Phelan, Speaker of the Texas House, representative from Beaumont. He was forced into a runoff election. What was your reaction to the numbers Tuesday night?
Well, of course, we were focused on my race,
sure.
and we were proud to have been reelected. And when it comes to the speaker, look, there's no mistake and no secret that I'm a proud supporter of Speaker Phelan. He is the most conservative speaker in the history of the Texas House.
Well, why did he have trouble then?
Well, I think look at the forces that came against him. Speaker Phelan in his district, District 21, you've got 3 counties. You've got Orange County, Jefferson County, and Jasper County. Right. 3 different candidates. You had the lieutenant governor who actively campaigned first time in my lifetime, in my legislative history, I think maybe in Texas history, where a sitting lieutenant governor has actively campaigned against the Speaker of the House. You had President Trump come in. But Speaker Phelan serves his district well. He and his family are involved in their district. They know their district. And he's delivered on the conservative priorities that are important to Republican primary voters. If you look back at what we've accomplished over the past couple sessions, you would be hard-pressed to find a major conservative priority that did not pass. And the ones that did pass, passed because of Speaker Phelan's leadership. And so I'm expectant and confident that he's going to come out victorious from his runoff election, and I'm willing and eager and able to do anything and everything I can to help.
Let me ask you about school vouchers. Is Texas now a lot closer to finally getting these passed because of what happened on Super Tuesday?
Yeah, I think so. And anyone who isn't willing to admit that has their heads buried in the sand. What happened last night, this week in the election is a resounding victory for school choice, for parental choice. I think that if legislators are responsive to their voters, specifically to their Republican primary voters, we're going to come into next session and finally deliver on school choice. I expect that to happen. I'm hopeful that it will.
What kind of options would you support? Because Governor Abbott talked about a universal option, $10,000 per family, per kid, per year. There were others talking about, let's give the school allotment, $6,500 per family per year. What would you support?
Well, what absolutely has to happen, and what I think can happen and needs to happen, is a major investment in public education. We need to pay our teachers more. We need to invest in school security. We need to do away with the STAR test. There are things that we need to do to improve and strengthen public education. At the same time, and in the same bill, we should support parents. We have to support parents and students who may decide, for whatever reason, that the public school in their community isn't right for them, isn't right for their kid at that moment in time. And give them the option, the choice, and the power to take their kids out, put them in a private school, in a charter school, in a home school. That's the parents' options. That's the parents' choice, not the government.
What does that look like, though? What does that look like?
Well, I think you've got to give parents options. Yes, part of that includes financial, where the money follows the student. If you remove a student from a public school and you homeschool them, or if you private school, we're making sure that money is following the student in the form of a voucher, an educational savings account. But it's also making sure, and this is very important, that the government that there's no strings attached to private schools, to parochial schools, to homeschooling. We want to make sure that parents are free to educate, to raise up their kids in the way that they want without unnecessary government interference. We can do that like other states have done. We must do that while at the same time supporting and investing in public education. I believe we can do both, and I believe that we will next session.
Is that no strings attached, meaning no accountability for private schools that get public money?
The ultimate accountability is parents. Without question, the ultimate accountability is parents. And by the way, we need to relook at and revise accountability in public education as well, including the STAR test. We should do away with the STAR test and come up with something, some assessment and accountability measure that actually works. But ultimately, what I believe is that parents are the ultimate form of accountability for their kids, and will ultimately choose what's best for their kids and their families.
Jeff, congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason.
All right, let's bring in the roundtable to talk more about this. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Matthew Watkins is here from the Texas Tribune, and Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Super Tuesday changed a lot in Republican politics in this state, Bud. I am most curious about Speaker Phelan. He finished second. He's made the runoff. He finished second in his district. Can he survive?
He can survive, but it's going to take some help. He did not get help from Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott did not endorse either candidate in this race. You know, his opponent, David Covey, had these very effective communicators. Dan Patrick, who was a talk show host, sportscaster, who'd come out very powerfully. Even the Donald Trump, comments are powerful. Dade Phelan's not really a powerful speaker. We saw the interviews with him. He looked like he was caught doing something wrong, and they were terrible. He doesn't come off well on television. If all you've got is Rick Perry out there arguing for you, you need more help.
Matthew?
Yeah, I just think it's worth pausing and noting how momentous this is. We just heard Jeff Leach talk about how Phelan is the most conservative speaker in Texas history. That is a credible case to be made given the bills and laws that passed under him. And to see him as kind of viewed as too moderate really tells you where this electorate in Texas is going, and the impact, if he does not survive, could be really major on the politics of this state.
Bernadine, it could be huge impacts.
Well, actually, it's huge now. The fact that he is in a runoff, he is not a very good communicator, but he delivered for conservatives, and to say that he did not is even questioning where the Republican Party actually is going. Yeah. It appears as if there's not going to be a middle at all.
Yeah, I think the middle is definitely gone.
He needs to come out and make the case for himself powerfully of why he's done a good job. He can't just have everybody else sitting around saying he's conservative.
Well, and then also it shows those candidates who never had opponents.
Right.
They were not used to campaigning and going out and talking to the voters. And I think that in these instances, it played against them.
All right, here's what else is coming up. When we come back this morning, Colin Allred with momentum after that decisive win on Super Tuesday. He gave us a call from Washington, D.C. And Julie Johnson likely leaving the Texas House for the U.S. House. The Dallas Democrat says one thing helped her defeat 9 opponents to avoid a runoff. She's up next with us when Inside Texas Politics returns. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Colin Allred starting his general election campaign with momentum after that decisive win on Super Tuesday. Defeating Ted Cruz is going to be a much steeper hill for him to climb. Allred called us from his D.C. office hours after his big win. Congressman, congratulations. That was a decisive win on Tuesday night. No runoff despite 9 candidates. What was the biggest takeaway from the results?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jason. To me, this is something that was a culmination of efforts from so many people. And I really want to thank all the folks who got involved with our campaign, who supported our campaign, who made phone calls, who knocked on doors. It was incredibly inspiring, and I was humbled to have their support. And so I really want to, first of all, thank them. But I also think that this is where Texas Democrats want to go, as they want to have somebody who can bring folks together, who has a proven track record of being an independent, of reaching across the aisle, of trying to get things done. I think we're very pragmatic, headspace right now, one in which I think is where most Texans are as well.
Let's break down the numbers here and talk about this, because I know you and your campaign have looked at this. The incumbent, Ted Cruz, got 1.9 million votes in the Republican primary in Texas on Tuesday. That's more votes than Donald Trump got in Texas, which is an astonishing number. On the Democratic side, fewer voters over there. There were 565,000 votes that you got in order to decisively win your campaign, but it's a quarter of what Cruz got, and that's a big difference.
Well, I think they had a lot of competitive primaries on their side, of course, at the presidential level. I think that drew a lot of the interest. But certainly our task is going to be the same, regardless of what the vote totals were in the primary, which is that we know that we want to get more of our fellow Texans engaged in this election. Our democracy is not a spectator sport. It's one where we all have to be engaged. And so I want to make sure that I engage as much as I possibly can, as many Texans as possible. And that's what you'll see us trying to do over the next few months. And I want to build a broad coalition of folks who want to protect and restore our freedoms, protect and restore a woman's right to choose and access to abortion, protect our democracy, which is still very much at risk. But also, I want folks to know that I've been the most bipartisan member of the Texas delegation, that I pride myself on reaching across the aisle and trying to find ways and trying to find common ground in a way that I think is the exact opposite of Senator Cruz, who I think is one of the most partisan, if not the most partisan senators in the country, to the extent that when we have a crisis at our border, and we have a package in the Senate to try and address that crisis, he takes that package down, not because of the policies, he agreed with the policies, but because of the politics, because he wanted to run on the problem in November. I think Texans are sick of that kind of cynicism. I think it's going to help us build the broad coalition that I know we're going to need.
Congressman, you're well known for compromise, for working across the aisle, for reaching across the aisle and talking to the other side, but election results would show that the Republicans in Texas are moving further to the right. Many Democrats moving further to the left. There doesn't seem to be an appetite for compromise. Is that going to be a winning issue for you, though?
I've always felt that our people are better than our politics. And what I mean by that is that when you talk to normal folks, this is something that always rejuvenates me, you realize that that's exactly what they want. They want somebody who can reach across the aisle, who can get things done, because they go to work every single day with folks that they disagree with. And they have to find a way to get things done. And I think part of the cynicism that we've seen kind of creep into our politics and into our democracy has been because of this hyperpartisanship, because of folks like Ted Cruz, who've made it seem like there is no other way. And I want to show Texans that there is another way, that there is a chance for us in this election to elect a senator who will try to represent all 30 million of us, who won't pit us against each other, who won't try to take advantage of the seams in our societies to pull those apart, but will actually try to bring us together. That's something I've tried to do as an athlete. That's something I've tried to do as an attorney. Something I've done in my time in Congress. And that's what I hopefully will do in the United States Senate.
Congressman, congratulations to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jason. Appreciate it.
The race to replace Colin Allred in Congress has surprised many Democrats in Dallas. 10 Democrats running for it, but Julie Johnson edged out all of them. She got a little more than 50% of the vote to become the Democratic nominee, and she took our questions in studio hours after her win. Julie, congratulations here. 10 candidates in your race. You ended up with a little more than half the vote, avoiding the runoff. What do you think made the difference?
Women. Women made the difference
How
in this
so?
race. Well, several reasons. You know, women drove the turnout in this race. Over 60%, at least the last numbers, were women voting, and especially older women, because I think they're very upset. They're upset about several things. They're upset about our freedoms being taken away, the attack on women being able to control their bodies, to control their families. But also, what we also heard was they're upset that so many men were trying to tell the most qualified woman that she shouldn't have her opportunity, and they saw themselves in that as well.
Democrats in the Texas House can arguably get more done than Democrats in Congress. What do you think you can get done in D.C.?
Well, I'm hoping Democrats will be in the majority, you know, and then we'll have the great trifecta. Hopefully, Biden will get reelected. We'll take back this. We'll keep the Senate and take back the House. And I look forward. There's so many important things we need to do to pass to help make life better for folks.
If elected, first day on the job, what's priority number one?
Restoring access for women to control their own bodies and abortion health care. You know, we cannot have a society where women took a step 50 years back. Women have to be in charge of their own body, their family, and when and how they become that. So it's critically important. And then also the Equality Act. You know, this for LGBTQ community, Texas is ground zero for hate and against our community. I'm very excited to be the first openly gay person that will be elected to Congress from the state of Texas and any southern state. And I intend to take that mantle in strong.
You mentioned this, but let me ask you about it. We noticed in the numbers that all of the openly gay candidates in Dallas County won the races. You did. State Rep. Vinton Jones is reelected District 100 in South Dallas. Former Sheriff Lupe Valdez, she made the runoff against the incumbent, Marion Brown. What message does that send?
I think it just sends that hate against our community doesn't play. You know, people just want everybody to have a fair shot. That's what everyone wants, is a fair shot for themselves and their family, regardless of the color of the skin, who you worship, and who you love. And I think that message transcends everyone.
Did you notice those results last night?
I did. You know, Vinton and I have campaigned a lot together. Our districts overlap, and he's endorsed me. I've endorsed him. He's a good friend. We've worked together in the Texas House. He's going to be a great member. Congratulations. Thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Lots to discuss in Super Tuesday. The roundtable is coming up next. All right, let's bring the roundtable back in to talk about what happened over the past few days. The dust has settled since Super Tuesday, but I want to talk to you about the 30 or more new members of the House going in. How does this change the politics of the Texas House?
It's going to be a long time getting the House off the ground in the next legislative session. They may be choosing a new speaker. Even if Dade Phelan's reelected, they may be choosing a new speaker. You know, all new Republicans would have to figure out what they agree on, don't agree on. But, you know, these elections, all these elections, Jason, that came down, I say that this was the mega election. MAGA, money, and Greg Abbott decided this election. So it was all the money, millions of dollars poured into races against these incumbents to get vouchers passed in Texas. And then Greg Abbott's endorsements were the most effective statewide. People give Ken Paxton a lot of credit, but it was really the Abbott endorsements that made the difference. And on the Court of Criminal Appeals, I think it was Donald Trump's endorsement there.
Matthew, you guys had tremendous coverage at the Texas Tribune there. What do you think drove voters to the polls on Tuesday?
I think, you know, we can never ignore that it's the top of the ticket that really people are paying attention to. But I also think, as was already mentioned, there was a lot of money poured into this race. Even Greg Abbott received the biggest donation in Texas politics history, $6 million from a Pennsylvania businessman. He sunk most of that money into House races, trying to get pro-voucher candidates in there. We spoke to one candidate who was targeted, Gary Van Dever, who talked about how a lot of the ads that were running against him didn't even have to do with vouchers. It was about immigration. It was about gun control. But the goal behind those ads was to get pro-voucher candidates. And we saw it was a very effective thing. And I think we're going to see, you know, a much more voucher-friendly House next session.
And Bernadine, Governor Abbott was a big winner as well, like Bud was talking about here, like Matthew was talking about too. He came out really on top with this and sent a message to anybody, don't defy me.
I know it. And then, you know what? He told them during the sessions that he was going to get them if they did not vote on vouchers. And I think that the money, but also what Matthew mentioned, the messaging They targeted the districts where they wanted to target. They talked about vouchers, but they didn't even mention vouchers where they did not think that would work or that would play out. And they talked about immigration. The strategy was excellent. The money was there. They knew how to target, and which is going to be very interesting in the general when you have the Democrats trying to compete, because the Republicans showed in the primary they know how to target, which has always been they were excellent messaging.
Sure.
They can raise the money, and it's going to be difficult to knock off those candidates who do not want knocked off.
Bud Collin Allred, we had on the program here just a moment ago talking about how he thinks people are better than politics. And he's known for that bipartisanship. Is that going to be a winning message come November, though?
It's very difficult in Texas, particularly in a presidential year. You're going to have Donald Trump at the top of that ticket, driving votes for Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz doesn't even have to run against Collin Allred. All he has to do is go around and say, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. He's with Joe Biden. I'm with Donald Trump. That look how the percentage Donald Trump's going to carry in Texas. Ted Cruz will carry nearly that same percentage.
Bernadine?
Well, keep in mind now, in the primary, Ted Cruz carried more votes than Trump, but Collin Allred is going to have a very difficult time, and he cannot do it by himself. The Democratic Party is going to have to come in and help him, and it's going to be turnout, 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 turnout. That's what's going to win this election, as well as money, which is going to be poured into the state. Yeah,
indeed. So, Matthew, we're out of time. Thanks, as always, for the input from you. Good to see you again as well. Bud, Bernadine, we appreciate it, too. Thank you so much for watching Inside Texas Politics. We're back again next Sunday and hope to see you then. Take care.